Well, everyone, it's time to go back on another infamous old-fashioned rant that's usually on my channel at some point. And I drop these all the time. Now, here's the thing, okay? iOS 14 came out, alright? And for some reason, I don't know why, I don't know, like, the tech community needs to come up with better jokes, bro. Like, I look at all these other communities, like the beauty community, like the car community, like all these people have crazy jokes. We have the same jokes over, and it's the same thing where it's like Android has had that for years, or iPhones have had that for years, yada, yada, yada. And I totally will never understand this because both sides, now me personally, I use iPhones, I use Androids. At this point, I have more Android phones than iPhones, but I use an iPhone as my main phone, but I always carry like a Samsung with me on the side or something. I don't know. And I don't think one is way better than the other one. Both sides have stupid things going for them. Both sides have really, really great things going for them. So one doesn't necessarily win over the other, in my opinion. But seeing that thing where it's like Android has had that for years is just so weird. And that's the more recent one. So I'm going to hit on that. And here's the thing. Okay, with iOS 14 coming out, we saw that basically the biggest visual difference was the widgets. That's one of the bigger things that came with iOS 14, and rightfully so. We were waiting on basically a visual change from Apple, and this is a huge step closer into it, which is really cool. And yeah, I mean, Android has had that for years, I'm not going to lie, but people have stated before that, Macs had widgets way before Android was even created, which was really cool. And that's another super important thing. So they're always taking things from one another, you know what I mean? Like, they kind of push the boundaries one at a time. And widgets was one of those things that I think Apple had to perfect before they go and ported it over. But here's the other thing, and some people said this, but I don't really remember who said this either, but they basically said like Apple, had to perfect it, and that's why it came out now. They could have made it a long time ago, but they waited because they wanted to perfect it. I don't really think that's how they do it. I think they purposely do it because they know there's not too many things they can go and update to. So they have to span out these features. Like, I'm sure they already had like split screen multitasking, all these different things, but they're purposely waiting it out so people will have a reason to go and update to iOS 15 and iOS 16 and yada, yada, yada. With Android devices and with Android software, I feel like it's almost kind of the opposite. Basically, whatever they have at that time, they go and kind of push and see what happens. Same thing with Samsung phones. Really, whatever technologies and hardware they have at their time in their possessions, they just go and put it in a phone. Whereas Apple, they have the greatest and latest, but they purposely span it out so people will have reasons to update over the time. So with that being said, both sides do really weird things sometimes. Okay, it's totally okay. But if you actually want to take it up a notch, no pun intended, if you actually look at the gestures that were within Android 10 that recently came out, Apple, iPhones have had that for a minute, iPhones have had that for, since iPhone 10 days, which, is very important to say. And the gestures work almost identically to how the iPhone 10 gestures are, but they're still not as smooth in my opinion. When I mess around with my Galaxy S20, I feel like it could definitely use a little tuning up. It's definitely not the fastest thing in the world, but you could say Android kind of took that from Apple too, couldn't you say that? And here's the other thing, and this is a very, very important thing to keep in mind. Is it a bad thing that Google did that? Absolutely not. I think the experience is a lot better on my, Android device, on my Galaxy S20 and on my Pixels. And I'm not mad, like when I'm using it, I'm not upset that, Apple invented it or Apple was, using it on a bigger scale. Like, I'm not really upset about that. And so, I mean, the same thing is like, if you see somebody else doing something, should you not implement it because, it can give your users a better experience? Like, I don't really get that. And Android has done this too, like I said, with the gestures. But another humongous thing that just recently came out with iOS 14 that I really haven't seen on any other device was this new privacy setting that basically alerts you of what data your specific phone is used by when you're on TikTok or Instagram or whatever, and you can see what data they have of you specifically while you're using it. And we saw TikTok kind of respond with this copy and paste data. They were basically reading your clipboard and stuff, which is pretty insane in my opinion. So, Apple was kind of one of the first ones to do that in a way. They didn't invent privacy settings, but they invented that kind of thing in a way to give you notifications of it. Now, if Google were to implement that, would that be a bad thing or a good thing? Because Google's probably going to do something like that, probably within Android 11. I haven't seen anything like that yet, but that would be a pretty big update and a very useful thing. So would that be like, oh, they're copying Apple? Well, they kind of did, and I feel like they're going to do it. They're going to have to do it if you think about it. Like, this is a good thing that Apple's doing, so they're going to do it regardless. But it's just a situation where if Android and Google implements this, is that going to be like, oh, they're copying Apple now? Because I don't know. It's just a weird thing. I mean, I'm not saying don't do it. I think it's funny sometimes. But I think other times it's just like, there's other blatant things that copy off of each other. And I don't even think like if you see a certain software that has great features and everything, I think it'd be great to implement it on your own. We look at BlackBerry OS, we look at Windows Mobile, like they didn't really innovate too crazily, at the time. And that's why they pretty much failed. You know, they had like 1 or 2 highlights and that was it. And they really didn't copy off one another. They were very, focused in on their specific, surroundings in a way. Where Apple and Google, they kind of share from one another. And I think that's very important. So in my opinion, is Apple copying Google? Probably. But on the other side, is Google copying Apple? Probably too. They're both copying from each other. One doesn't necessarily is, innovating truly by themselves. So that really pretty much covers it. If you guys have any questions or anything, let me know in the comment section below. Hit the like button, that would mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. Every single subscriber that we get really does count. So it means so much if you guys could hit that. Also check out the other links down in the description as well. My Twitter, my Instagram, my second channel. All those links are linked down below. I'd really appreciate if you guys to check it out. More importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.